and good day to everyone. Thanks again for joining us in this webinar, Seafaring in the 21st Century. Is Maritime Education in the Philippines up for the challenge? My name is Marla Asis. I'm from the Scalabrini Migration Center, and I am co-facilitating this webinar with Father Paulo Prigol of the Stella Maris Center here in Manila. But before we proceed to our program, I'd like to invite Father Paulo to lead us in a short prayer or a moment of silence for starters. So, Father Paulo, please.
Thank you, Marla. I would like to invite all of us for a moment of silence, of which we entrust the Lord this webinar, our seafarers, our stakeholders, the maritime partners, and all joining us today. So in its silence, we ask the Lord for blessing and guidance. And we ask this in the name of Jesus, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Father Paulo. You know, one advantage of having a chaplain as a co-facilitator is that we don't have to scout for anyone else to say the opening prayer. Thanks, Father. So Father Paulo and I really welcome you, and we're very happy that this particular webinar has generated a lot of interest. No? Father, can you tell us about the background of the participants who are joining us in this afternoon's webinar?
Well, we have a number of people from a number of nations in our list. There are more than 220 there. We have, of course, from the Philippines, we have from Italy, we have people from Egypt, from Taiwan, from a number of nations here in Asia. We welcome everyone. We are happy that I see there also people from Vancouver right now. We are happy that the maritime schools are there. There are, I do not know, perhaps the marine administrator has best information, but guys, I think there are about 90 maritime schools in the Philippines, of which Stella Maris has visited 62. So welcome, guys. Thank you for being there. We welcome the students. Some of them are there, and by all means, the seafarers. I think there is a very good number of seafarers there supporting us. And by all means, the speakers that will be introduced one by one later.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. So actually, Father, we have also participants joining us based in Algeria. Can you believe that?
Yes.
Also from Canada, Colombia. You've mentioned Italy, right? Also from Japan and Korea, South Africa, Spain, Switzerland, Taiwan, and the UK. And perhaps just to give a very brief background, because at the very beginning we showed a video of Stella Maris. So, Father, can you tell us in just a few sentences what Stella Maris is all about? And the link, of course, to maritime schools here.
The Stella Maris is the former apostleship of the sea. This year we celebrate, we are supposed to celebrate on October 4, 2020, 100 years. But thanks to the pandemic, we haven't done anything. So Stella Maris is a worldwide network, and we cater for seafarers, fishers, and their families. We are more or less more than 1,000 chaplains and volunteers. We are present in 57 nations and in 300 ports. That is Stella Maris, the star of the sea. So from now on, please, when you refer to us, no longer apostleship of the sea. We are now Stella Maris in our centennial.
Okay, thanks very much for that explanation, Father, because I think a lot of people are indeed very familiar with AOS. No? So we have to
Correct.
remind them that the new name is also Stella Maris. I'd actually like to acknowledge the contribution of Father Paulo in organizing this conference, because he was the one who suggested that for our third webinar, we focus on maritime education in the Philippines. And judging from the response of our participants, no, the participation that we are getting, we think that this is really a very timely topic. And so I just like to provide a very brief background about this webinar before we proceed to our resource persons. So as everybody knows, in the Philippines is recognized as a major source country of seafarers on international merchant ships, providing more than 30% of the total global seafarer requirement. So it is not surprising, therefore, that many Filipinos aspire to become seafarers to achieve their dreams for a better life for their families. And this journey towards this dream begins with their maritime education. Out of the many hopefuls who begin their maritime education, only a few can fulfill the onboard experience in order to graduate. And of those who are able to complete their Bachelor of Science in Marine Transportation or Bachelor of Science in Marine Engineering, only some 20% are said to be able to serve on board vessels. So therefore, over the years, the numbers, the attrition is very, very significant. As mentioned earlier, there are around 90 maritime schools that offer programs to interested aspirants and numerous training centers that provide continuing education and skills upgrading for our seafarers. But over the years, concerns about the quality of maritime education have been a topic of heated discussion. And if we also consider significant trends outside, no external trends, these also have implications for the employment chances of Filipino seafarers. These are, among others, increasing automation, the fit between maritime education and changing industry requirements, as well as increasing competition from other countries. On top of these concerns, the ongoing pandemic is also generating many uncertainties, questions, and anxieties for all stakeholders in the maritime industry. So, some of the nagging questions are: what are the job prospects in seafaring at this time? What is the future of seafaring? What are the health risks to seafarers during this pandemic? And how can students learn during this time? Is online or blended learning sufficient? So actually, these are some of the questions that we also gathered from the participants who registered. This webinar focuses on maritime higher educational institutions, and it aims to take a close look at the current and future state of maritime education. Also, it attempts to identify areas of strengths and weaknesses, and to identify some key steps towards quality, useful, and relevant maritime education in the country for the present century. We attempted to bring to the table resource persons representing different sectors in the maritime industry to present their unique perspectives on the topic. We will introduce them later, but for now, let me just express our thanks for their availability and generosity in joining our discussion. We hope that the multi-stakeholder discussion will contribute to more meaningful discussions and perhaps identify needed reforms and also steps to foster the spirit of solidarity for moving forward. We have 2 hours for this webinar. We start with the presentations of our invited speakers. This will be followed by reactions from our invited discussants. But we want this webinar to be very interactive as much as possible. So we already received many interesting and provocative questions from those who registered. We also encourage those who did not register but who are also joining us to please share your comments, your questions, and recommendations. And please use the chat box for this purpose. So parts of the conversation during this webinar might be in Filipino or a mixture of Filipino and English, and we will try our very best to provide the summaries in English. So without further ado, I'd now like to call on Father Paulo, who will introduce our first speaker. Over to you, Father.
Thank you, Barla. It is my honor to introduce our first speaker of the day, who is none other than Vice Admiral Roberto Arrugay Empedrad, AFP, administrator of the Philippines Maritime Industry Authority, or our Marina. Vice Admiral is a proud member of the PMA class of 1986. By the way, he hails from Tuguegarao, a city which I like very much. He continued his studies on other fields. He is a holder of Master in Business Administration. He completed various programs in national security, strategic leadership, and specialized fields such as international riverine and coastal operations. In addition to his professional training, Vice Admiral Empedrad has also completed hermeneutics and Bible study course and Christian teachers training course. I thank you, Vice Admiral, for the advices you give me via text message. He is an accomplished sailor and commander, and he has successfully commanded 5 Navy vessels. With proven competency, wealth of knowledge, and exposure, he has given key collateral assignments like the chairmanship boards of the Philippine Navy, which is a component of AFP modernization program. He was also a member of the Board of Generals, the highest promotion body of the armed forces of the Philippines. He has received numerous awards. I will not mention all of them because the list is quite long. Likewise, medals, badges, plaques, and certifications. However, this one we do mention. On the 19th of December 2017, President Rodrigo Duterte appointed him as the 37th Flag Officer in Command, Philippine Navy. His outstanding accomplishments in this assignment was very well recognized when the President himself conferred him with the Philippine Legion of Honor, which is a degree of commander. During his retirement ceremony, he is a recipient of many other awards. A month after his retirement from the AFP, he was sworn into the office of Marina as administrator. And that was on March the 3rd, 2020, by the very President Duterte. Vice Admiral Roberto A. Empedrad, AFP, if you wish for his friends, Bob, is a God fearing person. He is happily married to Bless, and they are blessed with one child, Jelom. So please join me and we welcome Vice Admiral Robert Arugay Empedrad, the Marina Administrator.
First of all, thank you, Sir Paulo, for that well-researched introduction. I'm very honored to have been introduced by you, sir. A very respected personality of the maritime industry in the entire Philippines. So, sir, can I have our presentation in the screen, if it's possible now? Okay, so that's it. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. All our audience, even globally, are with us. So thank you for joining us. In behalf of the Maritime Industry Authority, allow me to express our sincerest appreciation to the Scalabrini Migration Center Incorporated and Stella Maris for inviting me and our team to this webinar. I am very well pleased with this opportunity to share with you the current status of the Philippine higher education institutions, the improvements in the Philippine maritime education system. First, allow me to congratulate everyone, especially the organizers of this noble event, to once again provide an avenue for discussion in the improvement of the Philippine Maritime Education training system. Before I present to you the Philippine MET system, let me give you a history of the implementation of the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, 1978 as amended in 2010. The implementation of the STCW Convention started with the Maritime Training Council, which was then still under the Department of Labor and Employment. It is a council of 11 government agencies plus 2 private sector representatives. Having numerous departments, offices involved in the decision-making, there was an impossibility of exercising command and control of functions, and this resulted to the difficulties in aligning policies and regulations. To strengthen and ensure the integrity of the Philippine-issued STCW certificates, the Aquino government issued Executive Order number 75 of 2012, which designated the Department of Transportation and Communication, now Department of Transportation, through the Maritime Industry Authority as the single administration responsible for the oversight in the implementation of the STCW Convention. This issuance commenced the historical structure shift from a council of 28 years to a single administration. To fully establish new systems, Republic Act number 10635, also known as Maritime STCW Administration Act of 2014, was signed into law on March 13, 2014. And finally, to further strengthen the Marina as the single central maritime administration for the full and complete implementation of STCW Convention, the President issued Executive Order number 63 on September 21, 2018. For appreciation of the body, as introduced in the previous slide, EO 75 designated the Department of Transportation through Marina as single maritime administration and mandated the agency to exercise oversight and supervisory functions on STCW implementation. This transformation simplified the implementation of STCW with only 5 agencies coordinating with Marina: the Technical Education and Skills Development, or TESDA, the Commission on Higher Education, the Professional Regulation Commission, or PRC, the National Telecommunication Communication, and the Department of Health, or DOH, for medical certification. Next slide, please. 2 years late, then President Aquino signed RA 10635, which established Marina as the single administration responsible for implementation and enforcement of STCW Convention. This law transferred to Marina all powers and functions relative to issuance, validation, verification, correction, revocation or cancellation of certificates of competency, endorsement, proficiency, and documentary evidence required of all seafarers under the STCW Convention. RA 10635 likewise mandates Marina to exercise coordinative functions with the Commission of Higher Education relating to chairing the Technical Panel for Maritime Education, policy-making arm for matters relating to education and operational level merchant marine officers, monitoring of maritime education programs, and recommending for good governance that will improve substandard programs. This transformation is the current system in this structure. The SHED remains as the counterpart for supervising the education for operational level officers because the Philippines opted to maintain the formal education system to comply with these STCW requirements compared to the vocational system adopted by other parties. Our educational program for operational level officers are the Bachelor of Science in Maritime Transportation, or BSMT for the deck department, and the Bachelor of Science in Marine Engineering, or BS Mari for the engine department. Next slide, please. In support of the development of the Philippine Maritime Education System, the President signed EO 63 in 2018 to strengthen further the authority of the Marina as a single maritime administration. With the issuance of EO 63, we are now observing a whole government approach between the Marina, the SHED, Department of Health, Philippine Coast Guard, relative to the implementation of standards under STCW Convention. The signing of EO 63 allows the harmonization of STCW implementation between Marina, SHED, DOH, and PCG. Marina to take the lead role in the evaluation and inspection of applications for approval of maritime education programs, including those of the existing maritime higher education institution. Marina to have a stronger representation in the technical panel for maritime education, the administrator being the chair. Marina taking the lead role in the monitoring and evaluation of approved maritime education program, formulation of joint Marina and SHED issuance of rules and regulations, and strengthening of the Marina authorities on shipboard training, professional and technical courses in BSMT and BS Marine program. Next slide, please. At this point of the presentation, allow me to present the Maritime Higher Education Institution in the Philippines. Currently, there are 90 recognized MHEIs offering maritime education programs, of which 84 are offering BSMT, while 78 are offering BS Mari programs. Next slide, please. Evaluation and inspection. We conducted evaluations of these schools mandated by the Executive Order number 63. The Marina, together with SHED, led a one-time evaluation and inspection of all existing maritime higher education or institution to verify their compliance to the national policies and minimum standards set by the STCW Convention. This was conducted in two batches. 62 MHEIs were inspected last October to December of year 2019, and the remaining 28 from January to March of 2020. However, 7 MHEIs were not visited due to the pandemic. So far, Marina and SHED through the TPME had deliberated the compliances reports submitted by these MHEIs were in a total of 40 BSMT programs and 33 BSMRE programs offered by 55 MHEIs were found to be compliant with the standards that are set. On the other hand, 10 BSMT programs offered by 10 MHEIs and 9 BS Marine Engineering programs offered by 9 MHEI were not compliant due to uncorrected deficiencies, and we are engaging them, giving them chances to be able to comply so that we will be compliant to the STCW conventions. Next slide here, please. In line with Marina's strategic plan to provide governance, evaluation, and inspection should be regularly conducted. On EMSA inspection, the EMSA was directed by the European Commission to conduct inspection pursuant to the requirement of the STCW Convention. Under this regulation, each administration which recognizes a COC or CEOP issued by the another party to a master officer or radio operator is required to ensure that the provisions of the STCW conventions are fully complied with through an evaluation of that party, which may include inspection of facilities and procedures, standards of competence, trainings, and certification and quality standards. This is the reason why the Philippines, as one of the major providers of seafarers on European flag vessels, has been subjected to series of inspection by EMSA starting as early as 2006. Since that time, 8 EMSA inspection of the Philippines system of maritime education, training, and certification were conducted, the last of which was held on 24 February to 12 March of 2020 before the pandemic starts. Next slide, please. Even prior to the draft inspection report last December, which we received from the EMSA audit team, the Marina team already constituted a task group to determine and implement actions which are based on root cause analysis of the issues and concerns raised during EMSA inspection, because some of the issues concerned are recurring findings since 2000, as early as 2006. Currently, we are revisiting our initial plans of action and comparing it with the contents of the draft's EMSA inspection report in order to determine the appropriateness of the corrective action and to adjust the timelines as necessary. At this point, allow me to present to you the key action that Marina is undertaking, not only to address EMSA inspection findings, but also on a long-term improvement of the implementation of STC convention and the development of maritime education system in the country. Next slide, please. The Marina is set. Next slide, please. The Marina is also set to conduct hand-holding meetings with 11 MHCI visited by EMSA. On curriculum development, one of the ongoing actions to improve the delivery of maritime education in the Philippines is the development and issuance of standard course packages and training record book based on the newly published Joint Shed Marina Memorandum Circular number 1 S19, which governs the policies, standards, and guidelines for BSMT and BSMRE. This is not only to aim to address EMSA findings pertaining to curriculum, program of study, and delivery of courses, but also to provide a more uniform education system across all recognized maritime institutions. This project is being undertaken together with the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy and the standard course packages for the first and second year BSMT, BSMRE programs, which is expected to be adopted in the next academic year. To ensure that the cadets serving their onboard training on domestic ships are given sufficient opportunity to complete their watchkeeping duties and their onboard trainings are closely supervised and monitored by a qualified officer as required by the STCW code. Next slide, please. The revision of Joint Shed Marina Circular number 1 and 2 is concurrently being undertaken in order to incorporate the new curriculum map and program specification, including a structured program for the onboard training, which is a problematic issue as far as the education is concerned. Another policy being revised is Joint Shed Marina Memorandum Circular number 1 S2018 on the guidelines of Joint Shed Marina monitoring and maritime education programs to improve the regulation of MHEIs operating BSMT and BSMRE programs. Next slide, please. As way forward, next slide again, please. I will not discuss this anymore. Next slide, please. Next slide again, please. On the MIDP, the Marina launched its Maritime Industry Development Plan to increase capacity, efficiency, safety, and security of all Philippine-registered sea vessels, including shipyards and maritime auxiliary services. We added 1 priority programs which address the seafaring industry so that we will focus as well on the concerns of our Filipino seafarers all over the world. Next slide, please. There. The Philippines to advance the development and provision of qualified and competent seafarer as well as human capital requirements for global maritime industry, we added one priority programs to our MIDP, which is composed of 8 programs. Next slide. Next slide, please. For our way forward, Marina shall also pursue the following programs this year. Conduct the independent evaluation as required under Regulation 1.8 of the STCW Convention, revision of the implementing rules, regulation of the RA 10635, issuance of implementing guidelines for students affected by the closure, phase out of MHEIs, formulation of rules on the accreditation of Philippine registered ships for the structured onboard training of maritime cadets, revision of policies and instruments relating to monitoring MTIs and MHEIs, improve the quality of test items, improve IT infrastructure and adoption of effective operational procedures under the new normal. And yes, in closing, allow me to reiterate our commitment to continuously review our policies and be more responsive to the needs of our seafarers and the industry. With the support and cooperation of other agencies and all our maritime stakeholders like you, we can do great things together for the country's maritime industry progress. Amidst the challenges brought about by the pandemic, we truly believe that our industry shall come out stronger, more resilient, capable, and united to accommodate the demands of the world maritime trade. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Maraming salamat po, Vice Admiral Empedrad. And you are staying with us po, no, until
Yes.
the open forum. So
Yes.
for the questions and comments, we'll just return to you later. But I'd like to thank you for a very comprehensive presentation on the role of Marina in maritime education. And if I may just ask one very quick question, sir. What is the relationship between Marina and the Commission on Higher Education in terms of the maritime schools, especially in terms of regulating the maritime higher education institutions?
It's still the Commission of Higher Education is in charge still with BS Mari, BS MT. They are the ones who issuing the certificates of schools that will opening. They will be the one to renew the licenses of these MHEI. The role of Marina is to inspect this school jointly with the SHED to ensure that these schools are compliant with the standards that we want to implement, so that we will continue to provide competent seafarers. So we are on the technical aspect of ensuring that the schools are compliant always. So that's the role. That's what I can do on our relationship.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much, Po. So we'll get back to you later for the question and answer and open forum. Now, I'd like to jump into our second speaker, and I'd like to introduce him. He is Chief Engineer Agustin Bedia, the Dean of the John B. Blakson Foundation Maritime University of Molo, Iloilo City. Dean Bedia finished a Bachelor of Science in Marine Engineering from the same university, graduating in October 1997. A year after graduation, he started his seafaring career and has served as chief engineer of various vessel types until 2013. What is noteworthy about his career track is that he found time to pursue further studies in the field of maritime education. He was able to combine sea-based and shore-based experiences. Dean Bedia has completed several IMO model courses and holds several certificates of competency and certificates of proficiency. So his example is an example of a seafarer who has continued building on his skills and education. When he is not on board, he had stints as instructor in various training centers. In 2008, he completed a Master in Maritime Education from John B. Blakson College's Foundation Maritime University in Arriaga, Iloilo City. In 2020, he started pursuing a doctoral degree in maritime management from the same institution. It was also in 2020 that he was appointed Dean of the John B. Blakson Foundation Maritime University of Molo, Iloilo City. So, Dean Badia, may I invite you now to make your presentation?
Thank you, Dr. Marla. To all the participants, Dr. Marla, Father Paulo, Vice Admiral Impidrat, and the other discussants, good morning and good afternoon. I am honored to be invited in this webinar to speak about the perspective of the maritime education in the Philippines. As we all know, we have a lot of graduates who are not able to pursue the career at sea for some reasons that on board there are only some companies are only accepting one cadet for a year. However, with the 90 maritime schools that we have, assuming we graduate 100 students per year, that is around 9,000 aspirants. So we cannot do it. They cannot do with OBT or on-board training to pursue their career. Anyway, the topics I am about to present is the perspective of the maritime education in the Philippines. As Dean of the John B. Blakson Molo, I am also honored and privileged to present the vision of the John B. Blakson system, which states that we shall be the global leaders in innovation, responsive to the needs of the changing times in providing quality education and training by 2030. Our mission statement says that we shall provide quality education and training through innovation and optimum use of resources in instruction, research, and extension. We aim to improve the quality of life through trust in quality, health, safety, and environment. The first question that was assigned to me is, how did the institution meet the challenges of the training Filipino seafarers of the 21st century? As we all know, recently there was an outbreak of COVID-19, and this outbreak has completely changed the delivery methods of subject matters. Previously, we have the face-to-face, but for the meantime, we are not allowed to do the face-to-face sessions of delivering the subject matters. In the maritime education, it was not feasible to fully deliver the courses online, especially with the inclusions of laboratory subjects, which requires the hands-on instruction to students. So, the institution decided to offer a combination of modalities, such as synchronous, online via Zoom. If the students are connected with the internet, they can do it online. Asynchronous, if they aren't, if they're living in the rural areas where no connection is not available, they're provided with modules. In fact, they're also provided with USB wherein they could study their whatever lessons they have while staying at home. And possible limited face-to-face sessions at controlled conditions because we are only allowed to do limited face-to-face session under the permission of the LGU and the local IATF. But for the meantime, we are not doing any face-to-face sessions because of this fear of this pandemic. The school, they developed a learning management system called GEL. The limited face-to-face laboratory sessions will be implemented with the approval of the CHED and the local IATF recommendations. At John B. Blakson Maritime University, training of seafarers starts from Gibilbinyo Molo or Arriaga Maritime High Schools. Students from the junior high school to senior high school are taught with subjects related to maritime studies. Likewise, they're expected they're exposed to the maritime environment. The senior high school students are required to familiarize in the school's training ship MV Blakson. This is followed through at the collegiate level. The first-year marine engineering students are undergoing familiarization to the training ship MV Blakson. The second-year marine engineering students are doing anchor watches, while the third-year marine engineering students will undergo navigational trips or OGT at the Maritime Vanguard training ship MV Blakson. The second topic I have to discuss is what support do maritime schools need from the government. In this time of pandemic, we all know that the enrollment of private maritime institutions are decreasing considerably. As we all know, the tuition fees from the students are the lifeblood of private maritime higher educational institutions. In order to entice students to continue the pursuit of maritime career, the government should introduce scholarships to poor and willing students to enroll in the maritime education sector. Likewise, it is recommended that government grant soft loans to the maritime higher educational institutions for the purchase of training ships. Marina, as the administration body of the Philippine government, should formulate guidelines for the registration of training ship or formulate regulations for the training of cadets in the domestic shipping lines. It is suggested that domestic ships will be allowed to carry 100 cadets each for the deck and engineering programs. Provisions should be put in place to carry 4 maritime instructors for each program. JED Marina is requested to fast-track the protocol for conducting face-to-face classes in a limited scale for MHEI. Lectures can be done online or other off-campus modalities. However, some subjects with laboratory components requires face-to-face sessions. It is recommended that limited number of students, 50%, will be allowed to enter the school campus to receive face-to-face classes in laboratory subjects. Number 3 question I'm going to tackle with is the recommendations toward improving the maritime education in the Philippines. Number 1 recommendation says that students of maritime programs, the marine transportation and marine engineering, should undergo cadetship training, OBT, in a Philippine registered training ship. While on board, the cadets must continue their maritime education under the tutelage of a qualified maritime instructor. Curriculum should be provided by the MHEI for the cadets of both programs. The cadets will follow the work and study schedule prescribed by the maritime institution. As an example, the morning session will be allocated to practical works in the engine room, and the afternoon session will be lectures and other classroom activities. Practical works will be under the supervision of a qualified maritime instructor, and lectures and classroom activities will be under the tutelage of a qualified maritime instructor. Recommendation number 2, poor but deserving students should be granted with educational loans by the government at no interest. The contract should stipulate that manner of payment which will commence only upon employment. Recommendation number 3, the government is requested to offer assistance to private maritime higher educational institution instructors. As an example, 50% reduction in their income tax payments until new normal is attained at the maritime education sector. Recommendation number 4, Marina is requested to fast-track the registration of MHEI-owned training ship and implement protocols for the number of cadets allowed to board the training ship. The training ship should be configured to have 8 classrooms to accommodate 20 students and a study area. For each program, marine engineering and marine transportation, approximately 200 cadets and 10 maritime instructors will be allowed on board the training ship for a period of 12 months. The ratio of 20 students per instructor will produce an effective learning. The cadets will be charged fees that will cover the cost of their board and lodging and education on board. If the training ship belongs to the maritime school, then the fees will revert to the maritime school and will be expended for the operation and maintenance of the training ship. However, if the cadet joins a private domestic shipping company, then the fees will go to the shipping company. The cadet will pay minimum fees for the processing of their BA's degree. Recommendation number 5. The first course as stipulated in GCMMC 01 series of 2019, section 2.27, should be the last semester of the third year of the program BSMT or BSRMAR. This is for those students who are not able to board the vessel for 6 years. And ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your patience, and that will be the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dean Betia. Madamo gid nga salamat no, for your inputs and really the insights coming from a maritime school, no, so that it really gives us a sense of the challenges that you face as an institution. And thank you for the recommendations that you have put forward. You will also be with us, right, sir, until the very end of the program, so that, that we can have more exchange also with Vice Admiral and the other speakers. Po?
Yes,
You will stay with us. Okay, so we will get back to you, po. Now, moving forward with our program, we have heard from our very distinguished resource persons. Vice Admiral Empedrad gave us the policy framework, and we have the on the ground insights, no, from a maritime school that was presented by Dean Bedia. Now we go to our discussants, and the first on the list of our discussants is a graduate of maritime transportation. So perhaps we can have with us, join on the screen, Mr. Ezekiel Bern T. Okias. Is he joining
Yes.
us? Hi, good afternoon, Ezekiel.
Hello,
Kumusta ka?
Good afternoon po, ma'am.
Yes, okay. So I'll just give a very brief introduction. So as I mentioned earlier, he's a recent graduate. He graduated in 2019 with a BS Marine Transportation degree from the University of Cebu METC. I suppose this means Marine Education Training Center. And following his graduation, Mr. Akias found work in inter-island shipping. He is currently applying to go on board an international vessel. And he hails from Bye-Bye Leyte, Bye-Bye City, Leyte.
Yes po.
Hi. Yes.
po.
So, yes, Ezekiel, can you tell us about your experience when you were doing your BS in marine transportation? And perhaps baka you can also refer to some of the issues that were mentioned in the presentations of Vice Admiral Empedrad and also Dean Bedia.
For my experience in domestic, I'm watching on duties on the bridge, and some
Yes.
some officers advise me how to be a good seafarer, and that's all, ma'am.
Okay. So, when you started working on the inter-island, shipping, did you feel that you were prepared to work? Did you feel that you were prepared? Did you feel that your training when you were at the University of Cebu was enough?
Yes, it's all 100% prepared po, ma'am.
In your experience as a student, what were the courses or what were the subjects that were very useful to you?
The Seaman's laboratory and the navigation po, and all the collision and regulation po.
Okay. So what about the onboard part, the onboard training? How were you able to gain some knowledge, practical knowledge from that experience?
From my experience in on board, for me, I I know how to steer the ship, and some officers are to calculate the navigation, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
importante, no? Importante yung mentoring from the more
Mm,
experienced people, no?
Yes.
Would you say that that would be true? Paano naman, what about yung ano, how was the application process like, no? Because yun nga, when we look at the statistics, there are, of those who are able to finish their BSMT or BSMARE, not many are quite fortunate to have landed a job on a vessel, no? Starting with domestic vessels. So, how was that experience like when you were applying for a job?
Uh, for applying the job, ma'am, is I have a kuan, ma'am, a backer for a domestic.
Ah, okay. Okay. So even in the domestic, in the
Yes,
inter-island shipping industry, you needed a backer, no?
backer.
Kasi, yeah, that
That's
is actually one of the
yes, po, ma'am.
comments, no, from our registered participants. Several participants noted that it's difficult to get a job,
Yes.
both
Kasi
in the domestic. Yeah. Go
ma'am,
ahead, please.
ang hirap po kasi kung walang backer mo, ma'am, kasi hindi ka
Mm.
tatanggapin agad.
Okay, okay. But yeah, so for the benefit of our other participants, Ezekiel was saying that it's really difficult not to have a backer because otherwise you don't have a chance of getting a job. Why did you
Yes.
decide to stop the domestic shipping, and why are you now applying for an international experience?
For me, I'm stopped for domestic because end of contract, ma'am, and I'm applying for international vessels so that I can take exam and
Mm-hmm.
save money.
I see. So
So,
yes. Since the time that you finished, did you take up additional training programs since 2019?
yes po, ma'am.
So what are these?
The MARPOL, the consolidated MARPOL, the 2-4 or the practical of one of steering the ship, ma'am.
I see. So how do you find those additional training programs useful as
Yes.
well?
Yes, yes, it's so very useful to onboard.
Okay. So now you are in the process of applying for to go on board, no, on an international vessel. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience? What are some of the challenges that you see, and also maybe some opportunities that you have encountered?
For me, from now on, ma'am, I don't have any company right now, but so hard to get the company.
Mhm. Mhm.
Take,
So
I'm
yeah.
taking exam, ma'am, from company.
And
That's all.
what has been the response so far? Ilan na yung how many applications have you submitted?
Marami-rami na po, ma'am.
Like how many is many?
Uh, 10, 10, ma'am,
10,
10.
10 applications so
10
far, yes.
applications.
And how do you feel about your prospects?
First,
Yeah, like
I hope
what
na
do you think?
good.
You hope that you will get on board very
On board
soon.
soon, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so thank you very much. Are there additional things that you'd like to share, like maybe in terms of recommendations to maritime schools and maybe support from government or other stakeholders?
Wala na po, ma'am.
Wala na. Okay, so we will see you again at the open forum. Okay, thank you
Thank you
very
po,
much,
ma'am.
Ezekiel. Yes. So we turn next to somebody who has had a very vast experience in international seafaring. And I'd like to welcome Master Captain Arnel Guadalupe.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon, and
Hello.
everybody. Hello. Good afternoon,
Yes.
everybody.
Yes, good
Yes,
afternoon, Captain Arnel.
yes, ma'am.
Please, can you tell us first a little something about yourself and then about your work experience?
Yes, I'm Arnel Guadalupe, and I employed one of our shipping company as master of their one principal, and I have been working at sea for a long time. As a seafarers, I think it is not easy to us because from very beginning we have to start from the lower rank and then up until we reach the highest rank uh, that we what we call that we will succeed. Yes. In my
So,
yeah,
go
ma'am.
ahead,
Go
please.
ahead. Yes, ma'am. Any
Yes,
question, please? Any
yes.
question?
Okay. Yeah, because yeah, you mentioned that you had to work through the ranks, no? So you start from the bottom and then go moving up. So
Yeah.
what are the things that a seafarer must do so that he will also move up the occupational ladder? Like in your case, now you are master captain, but you started also from the very bottom. So what did you have to do?
Yeah, we have to make our have self confidence, and we have always uh, respect to our superior, and we will learn hard and working hard so that we will reach the position that we want to.
So in your observation, ano po yung what are the strong points, no, of Filipino seafarers?
The strong point of the Filipino seafarers, on my observation, and we Filipino seafarers are very hardworking. We are very so hardworking, and not like on our rival country. Yes, but we what I mean, we have the confidence to work even though nobody is seeing to us. But in this case, yeah, anything we want?
Okay, yes, yes. So looking back po dun in your educational experience, did you feel that your education also prepared you sufficiently for actual experience on board, especially
Yes,
on international?
yeah. This we have education when we are during our school days, and we will compare to the what we are learning on board. It's a little. There is a big difference, especially in seamanship. No, we have to learn more. What we will say, the the practical is more is more what I call is more important
More
than the yeah it's more important than the theory, because most of there is some student also coming from another maritime school. They are very low in practical, but in theory they are so smart. No, that's correct.
Yes, okay. But what about po yung the trends that some people are also seeing now, like there's more automation. Um, do you think that there should be changes in the curriculum here in the Philippines so that Filipino seafarers can keep up with changes in the industry, including technological developments in
I think
seafaring?
there's no. I think, ma'am, there is no need any changes, because as what as what the CHED or the Marina is implemented, that is already that's already approved, and it is already okay. No need any changes.
Okay, yeah. So maybe a final thought. What would be your advice to students, no? Those who are studying right now and they aspire to become seafarers. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, in my advice to those who are still student, and please keep in mind that you you have the idea, and to learn more, and respect. You have to respect also, and give what we call, and give potential what you have,
Okay.
what you have.
Okay. Yeah. So in your case, Captain, you also invested a lot in training, no? After you finished, right?
Yeah, yes,
You
ma'am.
invest. Okay.
Yeah,
So siguro po, your training certificates are, would you say, would you have an estimate of how many training programs
I
have you
have a
gone
lot.
through?
I have a lot of training. I cannot go on board without these trainings that
Okay.
I have to I have to comply before I go
Yes.
to before I go on board. There's a
Yeah.
lot of trainings, but this
Yeah.
is okay. That is only
Okay.
a represent to us.
Okay. So you find the additional trainings also very helpful.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
Okay. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again also in the open forum because there might be also a few other questions. No. Thank you very
Okay,
much, Captain Arnel. And
okay,
now for the other
welcome.
discussant, I'd like to bring in Father Paulo because he will be the one to introduce our next discussant.
Thank you, Marla. For the benefit of our participants, Ezekiel, that is a question I will ask him later. His father is with him, and the father is a seafarer. It will be nice to see and to hear from him what is the motivation for him to be a seafarer. It can give us a help in the educational process. I think, Marla, there is an issue there that has been underlined by Vice Admiral Empedrad, by the Dean Pedia, by Ezekiel, and now Captain Arnell, is the issue of competencies. Perhaps we have to look into it to make sure that we not only have quantity in terms of seafarers, but by all means, we have quality as well, like what the captain was saying. We can go back to those issues during the open forum. Attorney Iris is the president of the Dolly Seafront Crewing Manila Inc. She is a lawyer who has held executive positions in various companies and organizations, especially here in the Philippines, in the maritime sector. Now she acts as a lead consultant to several government agencies involved in the shaping of the Philippine laws. Her most recent involvement has been at the forefront of the country's effort to answer the challenges posed by the pandemic, especially in the ensuing humanitarian crisis on crew change. I really know this by fact. Thank you, Attorney, for doing that. Together with a group of many agencies executives like IMEC, ITF, I'm sure we are familiar with that. She advocates Filipino seafarers' rights and welfare, and she is very much proactive, providing solutions to private and government sectors and addressing the impending loss of jobs now for our industry and the causes of disruption in the crew employment process and transportation. She has recently spearheaded chartering of the international flights that brought home 240 seafarers and deployed some 200 seafarers to help replenish the actively depleting crew presence on board. Attorney Iris has also worked with the industry and especially key entities launching enhanced maritime quarantine facilities in Manila. And again, thank you for that, Attorney. To ensure the safety of our Filipino seafarers, to make sure there is a crew change, and especially to make sure that our Filipinos are part of the global economy right now. It is my honor to welcome Attorney Iris Baglitat from Dole Seafront Crewing Incorporated.
Magandang hapon, Father. Salamat sa introduction. Yeah, it has been a very long challenge since last year. I don't think we have slept at all since the pandemic broke out. It's been a very difficult time for everybody, especially for our seafarers now. But we still hope that with God's grace, we will overcome safe and strong. And then we will move past the pandemic, bringing all the lessons with us. So I thank also Vice Admiral and the Speaker, Chief Engineer Bedia, for your discussions. Particular thank Stella Maris for bringing to this panel. So I will comment from the perspective for Filipinos. In the mining perspective, or in marine HR perspective, our job is to ensure that we keep and acquire more jobs at sea so we have slots for Filipinos. We also ensure that seafarers are deployed safely in the most cost-efficient manner. So the role of maritime education is that it ensures that we as a country continue to educate, train, and produce qualified seafarers that are adaptable to the changes in the maritime setting, now including technology and digitalization. We have to put a lot of effort to produce assertive and proactive leaders in their workplaces, because these are important qualities that would open up more opportunities for us in the world fleet. Going through the discussion of Vice Admiral Empedrad, I do agree very much that the EMSA issues should be addressed most urgently. And I appreciate the current administration's focus on it. I also welcome the MIDP of Marina. One of the questions that is often asked of us is the disproportion between the number of graduates versus the number of those eventually employed from maritime schools. If I have it correctly, it's about 100,000 graduates a year, and about 20% are employed. So what happens to the 80%? There was some time, for some years, there was a push probably to already consider separating the ratings track from the officer track. For the ratings as we see it, one really does not need, for me, this is a personal opinion, a Bachelor of Science degree. What are most important would be language skills, comprehension, of course, safety consciousness, basic technical skills, emotional management, and EQ. These are the things that are needed for a successful sea experience or for a sea job. For engine ratings, what we see, you would need technical skills primarily in lathe machine fabrication, electrician skills, welding, but not necessarily a Bachelor of Science degree. And for mess boy, to go through the pathing in the galley, what we are looking at would be culinary skills, maybe basic HRM, HRA background. However, for officers, it's different. We need people who are highly intelligent, with high technical training, high academic standards, absolutely necessary. We also need people with high emotional quotient, who can manage their own emotions, who can assert without being emotional, who are leaders, who have strong management skills, grit. While operating in a structured and organized setting, they're able to assert without going into an emotional state. While we recognize people in officer position have to recognize that on board, they take responsibility for multi-million assets. They have to take care of people. They have to ensure that there is no pollution. They have to deal with commercial partners all over the world or commercial charterers. They have to deal with port state control in each and every port they call. They have to deal with vetting inspectors. They need to speak with regulators. That is the reason why they are paid very well. So to match that, there has to be a high level of management skill. For now, in European side, there's still a large number of European officers, East Europeans, and there's an economic behind it. The gap between dollar wages and euro wages has been reduced now because of the foreign exchanges, and for that it has become especially attractive for those living in Europe to go out to sea in East Europe. And for that, we compete in the position as Filipinos. So for the ship owners, what's important for them is to have people on their ships that can operate the vessel, that they can talk to, that can run it competently without any incident in a safe manner. That is what is important, and to supply the world requirement for all the cargo that is being brought in that vessel. That is a level of responsibility that an officer has, especially the master and the chief engineer. So how can maritime education in the Philippines, train excellent seafarers and future leader in the industry? These skill sets have to be understood. These are what you call, for lack of a better term, soft skills, but in no way are they soft. They also have to be very demanding when it comes to academic standards. Some of our cadets, for example, would be with East European masters, and they will be randomly, just for fun, tested on their basic mathematics skills, computation skills. And you can already see there some disparity. That should not be an issue. Maybe for consideration, in order to close this issue, that is something that the industry can look at. If the interest really is to be competitive globally, we cannot be entitled or we cannot be complacent that, the world ships cannot run without us. We are the only option. That sense of entitlement and idea has now led the overtaking also even of rating slots to other nationalities, which is rather unfortunate as I am beginning to see it. Also, some other countries are very strategic as a government. They really have a strategic agenda. They work together. There is no just individual interest, but really they work together to be number one together in the world to secure the jobs for our people. At the end of the day, for us in Marine HR, especially with my position, it is really to make sure that I find the right people to put on the ships. Because if I bring in the wrong people on the vessels, that could mean death on board, that could mean disaster, maritime pollution, that has too much consequences. And this is the frame of mind that is necessary for all of us in the industry to understand why and how we should be competing at a global scale. And with this, I continue the need for us to be more assertive is necessary. The need for us to be good in communication, both verbal and written, that is a non-negotiable. I am not sure if this is a focus in schools now, but if it is not, there should be a discussion on it. And at the same time, real management skills, real management education to be given to those who are going for officer positions. This is the end of my discussion, and I think I will see you later for the interaction.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Attorney Iris, for that very unique perspective. Indeed, what you have mentioned, like having highly critical skills, critical thinking. In fact, that was one of the questions that was posed also by some of our registered participants, how to develop critical thinking. But I guess what you also mentioned, like having management skills, and very importantly, communication skills, like what you have mentioned, the ability to be able to deal with different groups of people, different types of people, from inspectors to crew members and other officers. That's indeed very important. I also note with great interest what you had mentioned about being assertive, but at the same time also being able to handle themselves very well. From your presentation, we did get a very good glimpse of the challenges that are faced by officers. Kasi it really requires a combination of different skills, not soft skills, critical thinking, technical expertise, and a lot of human relations skills as well, to deal with different conditions and also different peoples that they have to interact with. It's also very interesting what you had mentioned about having maybe a different track in the training. In our maritime education, a track that's for ratings versus for the officers track. Because I remember what Vice Admiral Empedrad mentioned earlier also, that in some countries, seafaring is something that people do because they were able to get a vocational education, not a BS or Bachelor of Science as we do have here in the Philippines. So thank you very much, and we'll have a lot more discussion later. Okay, so I turn now to our final discussant. I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Nelson Turgo. Nelson is Filipino, but he's based now in Wales. He studied at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and Cardiff University. He is Research Associate at the Seafarers International Research Center, School of Social Sciences, Cardiff University. His research studies have primarily focused on qualitative research methods, ethnography, the human element of the maritime industry, and fishing communities. So good morning to you, Nelson from Wales. Please join
good
us.
Morning. Good morning, everyone. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, Marla and Father Paulo. It's always a pleasure to contribute to the enrichment of maritime education discourse in the Philippines, especially when our country leads the world in supplying seafarers to the global merchant fleet. And long may it continue. And listening to the presentations of our speakers, I'm very positive and confident about the prospects of maritime education in the country and Manila's position as the global manning capital. We take cognizance of the tremendous efforts being done by the government, led by Marine Administrator Vice Admiral Empedrad, and our maritime schools like John Blakson to address issues and concerns impinging on the continued competitive edge of our Filipino seafarers over other nationalities. As we await a decision of the European Commission, we can only hope that we are on the right track and our hard work is recognized by the executive arm of the European Union. I also agree with the recommendations made by Dean Bedia on how the government could help maritime institutions to weather the storm unleashed by the COVID pandemic. tough times indeed, but nonetheless, full speed ahead. And I support a two-tier track for our seafarers, espoused by Attorney Bagilat, a separate track for ratings and officers. In broader strokes, and in addition to what has already been said by the speakers and discussants in this webinar, I would like to highlight and reiterate three what I call maritime moments, which I think, in addition to other measures and realities on the ground, could also help us set the tone for a much more responsive and reflexive maritime education in the Philippines. The first moment concerns the need for our government officials who make crucial decisions in relation to maritime education and training to be given the cloak of, not Harry Potter's cloak of invisibility, but the cloak of reasonable immunity, not just from COVID, which is badly needed, but more importantly, from external pressure affecting their day-to-day decision. I had a look at some of the published studies on maritime education and training in some developing economies. And one of the recurring concerns is their local regulatory character, which is prone to being undermined by networks of political influence. I think, whether we like it or not, this finds resonance in the country. The industry is highly complex, fragmented, globalized, and we expect competing interests in this respect. That's fair enough. But for changes to be effected and take root, people running the show should be given all the powers that they need to take independent and empirically based decisions. In Philippine context, it could prove challenging, but it can be done if there is political will. The second moment is the continued assault, I think, on expert systems, not just in the Philippines, but all over the world in the advent of democratization of information and ways of disseminating them. I will connect this to the perennial complaint of seafarers that they are being subjected to so many trainings and seminars ad infinitum. I take the view that the complaint is, in so many ways, part of this continued and relentless assault on expert systems. More so nowadays, with many of us spending longer time on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. People have developed this attitude of incredulity to systems of knowledge. So the usual litany of complaint, daming requirements, daming hinihingi, nagmamagaling, mas magaling pa ako sa nagtuturo. And this, of course, is not the sole preserve of maritime education. The best way to counter this is to make sure that we provide the best training to our lecturers in schools and training centers, so that when they speak the truth to seafarers, this truth is uttered with confidence. This is, of course, a challenging task, since in most cases, we need to look at the economics of training the trainers. We need to really invest in our human capital in maritime education. We could only underscore the importance of continuous training and upgrading of skills through competence in teaching. The government should be able to step in to develop ways of helping schools and training centers to address this. The third moment is the need for an impassioned culture and habit of engagement with industry, academia, and NGOs. I believe that decisions should always be evidence-based, underpinned by robust empirical data and cogent analysis. If that becomes the mantra of our decision-making process, we are on solid ground. And we can only do that if we value the importance of research in maritime education. For example, I rather feel that it's an anomaly that some of the best research centers in the world on the seafaring industry are overseas. And we have no research center in the Philippines focusing on the maritime industry. So in that sense, we need the academe. Maritime research is very much underrepresented in the sector. The academe is there to tell us the truth, the inconvenient truth about us, about our sector. What are the things that unsettle us? Because what unsettles us will make us stronger. It's also along this line that we need to continue a thorough engagement with the private sector. For example, the crewing industry. You see, we are very fortunate that in general, we have a very responsive and supportive manning industry in the Philippines. People in the government, they come and go. But people working in the maritime industry, the manning sector, for example, many of them have withstood political upheavals, and we need to listen to their counsel. We need them because they know better than anyone else the lay of the land, or the curl and crest of the sea, as it were. In the same breath, we need maritime charities and NGOs, because based on my experience as a researcher, seafarers come to them to speak the truth about their employment, their lives, their worries and hopes for the future. Seafarers are confident to tell the truth when they speak to these people, to Marla, to Father Paulo. So through these NGOs, we get to hear the voice of Filipino seafarers in a way the subalterns speak through them. And I believe that if we regularly consult and engage with them, the academe, the private sector, the NGOs, this triad of pontoons in the maritime industry, we will have a much better buoyancy in the sea of uncertainties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nelson Turgo from SIRC. Thank you for a very thorough, no? And I think in many ways also provocative suggestions. Your discussion about the three moments are very much appreciated. And of course, for us coming from the research community, we can only agree with what you have mentioned about the importance, no, of fact-based, empirical-based decision-making, particularly in a very complex industry such as the maritime industry. Also, your point that, government officials, they come and go, but those in the crewing industry, they have been around for a very long time, and I guess they will be around also for the very long haul. I think you have also given us a lot of food for thought, no, to start off the open forum. So may I request Dax to maybe show on screen the other resource speakers that we have, because this is going to be a very interesting time. It will be a conversation, and we will be dealing with the questions that have been submitted to us. Okay, so we may not be able to address all the questions that have been submitted, including those on the chat box, although I think there are already some responses that have been provided on the chat box as well. But let me just start with one question first. No? So this is actually a set of questions. Okay, let me start with this question. So it's more like taking a look at the future. What subject areas and competencies are needed outside of STCW in the next 15 years to cope with developments in maritime automated surface ships? And a related question to that is, what is the future of seafarers, particularly Filipino seafarers, with regard to the creation of MAS or maritime autonomous surface ships? Will it impact the workforce and skills of seafarers? So anyone would like to start with that? May I invite maybe Vice Admiral Empedrad and maybe
Yes,
Dr. Nelson Turgo as well.
yes, Ma'am Marla. That question is very tough to
Sir?
answer. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, that question, I saw that question a while ago, and that's a very tough question to answer, because we are not yet aware. No, we know already about the mass, but we are not sure if that is going to happen. Siyempre, if ships are coming without crew, I don't know if countries will allow that to happen. It's a dangerous thing. Safety is there, and then when there is hard decision that has to make, as far as there are vessels that crossing their path that are manned by people. So I don't see. I'm not sure, but I don't see that is happening in the next future. But if that will happen, it will certainly impact our manpower seafaring industry because you don't need people to be inside the ship. So it affects. I'm sure it affects the lives of our seafaring Filipino seafarers. That's just my personal opinion.
Thank you very much, Vice Admiral Empedrad. Maybe Nelson and perhaps Attorney Iris might have some quick thoughts on that.
I've been attending maritime conferences, and there's been the talk of the town, as it were, of people attending conferences. The possibility of having autonomous ships in the future. I don't think the future is just 10 or 20 years from now. It might happen. We can't predict the future. It might happen, but I think if it happens, it could have only in a particular sector, very limited. Because, for example, when you transport hazardous materials, chemicals, for instance, I don't think that will be transported on autonomous ships. So, kagaya ng sabi ni Admiral Empedrad, I think that won't happen in a bigger segment of the industry, only particular segments if it happens. So, although, of course, we should be prepared for that future, if ever it happens.
Attorney Iris, would you like to share some thoughts?
Autonomous vessels, I am sure they will happen. Crewing is the biggest cost component in operating your vessel, right? So one of the biggest. And if there's anything in economics or in commercial, you will have to reduce what is the biggest driver of your cost to provide to the world cheaper alternatives. So there will always be a drive to move out to a more cost-efficient way. But this is something that we should always be mindful of. We should always adapt. I still haven't found my way around it on how to really approach it. As Vice Admiral has said, it's rather, and Dr. Nelson said, it's a rather difficult it's a difficult topic to overcome. And at this stage also, we are still seeing some developments. I am not sure how R&D been affected with a pandemic as well. So this might have an impact to those who are driving the change. I think China is one of those who is trying to push it forward.
Thank you very much. And go a little bit closer to our more immediate future, because there's a question here. What could be the trajectory of seafaring and the global maritime industry for 2021 and beyond, considering the pandemic? So, any volunteers who'd like to begin? What could be the trajectory of seafaring and the global maritime industry for 2021 and beyond, considering that there's still the ongoing pandemic?
I think just to start, for us, we are still seeing COVID-related activities up to end of 2021, maybe second quarter of 2022. The vaccination will have an impact as well, because what we are afraid of is that the airlines or global travel will now require people to be vaccinated before they're allowed mobility. So this is a key issue in the Philippines for us to remain competitive and to hold on to our seafaring jobs, as this could be a requirement before they're allowed to travel. This is the reason why we are very pushy in the industry to prioritize seafarer vaccination. We still operate on a COVID mode. So the industry, we do not see ourselves out of it within 2021. Perhaps we see a bit of change early 2022, but this is just a protection.
Vice Admiral Empedrad, you have some thoughts on those?
Yes, the ever-changing threat also we come up with ever-changing protocols. That's the challenge. Like for example, the second variant was they said that there is someone with the second variant came in, so we flagged down a lot of countries. Some seafarers who are coming from other countries, we flagged them down. But after 14 days, after a few days, we lifted the flagging down of seafarers coming from these countries. So every now and then we change the protocol for our in addressing the virus depending on the threat. So that's the challenge on how to immediately communicate with those involved in the crew change. For example, a ship is coming and then you change protocol and then you do not allow people to go down when they arrive in the port. These are the challenges. But again, I agree with Ma'am Iris on the vaccination. I could continually meet with or converse with Secretary Galvez and even our beloved Senator Bongo when I asked if we should prioritize our seafarer, because if not, other countries will get our slots. And they assured that we will prioritize the vaccination of seafarers if the vaccine arrives. Sabi nga ni Sir, kung gusto mo, ibigay ko sa 5 million vaccines for your seafarers. So, wala pa naman. I hope when it arrives, we give priority to our seafarers so that we maintain our being number one producing seafaring country in the world.
Thanks very much. I hope I got most of it right, because we had some problems with the connection. I just wanted to share with you, Vice Admiral, that there was also a question or comment about the vaccines, no? Whether seafarers are also going to be considered a priority for the vaccine program here in the Philippines, and especially in the context that they are considered as key or essential workers.
Yes, yes, ma'am. We have the assurance of. I have this discussion with Secretary Galvez, and he told me that he assured me that he will give priority to our seafarers.
Maybe I'd like to ask Dr. Nelson whether you've done some studies there at SIRC about the prospects of the global maritime industry, given that we have a pandemic in the background. Nelson, can you?
Of COVID. Okay. So we don't have any current study on the impact of COVID to seafarers, but I think the one thing that we should focus on is the impact on the mental health of seafarers. Because, seafarers are spending longer time at sea, and they can't do for example, do shore leave. So I think we really, when they go ashore and when they go back to the Philippines, crewing agencies should be able to address this mental health issue amongst seafarers.
Thank you. Yeah, Father Paulo can also have something to add to that. Because you've been in discussions about, seafarers being essential workers and what are the steps that have been taken to address the mental health of seafarers whose contracts have been overly extended.
Thank you, Marlon. I am quite sure the Vice Admiral Empedrad and Iris, we know the steps taken by other international organizations. And to be very honest, I think the direction that Marina is taking, it is the correct one. The leadership of Attorney Iris is really being felt by the seafarers. I think the main issue, looking into the guys that are with us, or by listening to the seafarers in other ports, regardless to the denomination, the real mental health comes in when nations, because of the protocols mentioned by Vice Admiral Empedrad, that we have our own. Today we have the protocols. Tomorrow they may no longer be applicable, and that becomes a nightmare for every single person in this sector And I just wonder how the aviation, the many agencies, governments can deal with that. How can we really be there and assist them? Therefore, I think it is crucial that we work on crew change so that once the contract is finished, they can come home, they can go on board. That is going to help us really to minimize the mental health issue. Because the comments of the seafarers, when you go beyond the 9 months, whether they like it or not, even if they wish to stay on board in order to make money, they all the list that Attorney Iris mentioned of the problems from the very guy there on top, the master, to the very guy there on the galley, that becomes very problematic, and the issues of mental health come in. I think the directions that we are taking, and thank you, Admiral Empedrad, for the news that we have as a priority our seafarers in the list for vaccination, it may help a lot to avoid mental health issues.
Okay. May I ask Captain Arnel, what has been your experience? No, like you probably have personal or maybe experience, or maybe the experiences of other colleagues whose contracts have been extended. And what do you think about these crew change hubs, no, that are being developed here in the Philippines?
Yeah, good afternoon once again. The problem is there is some country that they are not allowed to disembark, that they are not allowed any crew changes. And then that is the reason why the crew might have extend their contract due to this protocol of the other country. That's why the crew have anxiety because of their contract. They like to go home, but unfortunately, some country are they are not allowed.
But here in the Philippines, we already established crew change hubs. Do you think that will be helpful?
Yes, ma'am. I've been before here last year. Supposedly, some of my crew want to disembark here in Manila Bay, but the problem is the charges. The charges of our government agencies too high. That's why the ship's owner, instead of changing crew here, they prefer to change other country that is acceptable due to this high.
What is high and what would be acceptable?
What I mean the high the charges of the
Yeah, yeah.
sign up and sign on crew. Not like other country. I think why the ship's owner let the crew change to other country instead they are already in here in the Philippines. Why they prefer to change crew to the other country? I think as my owner told me that the problem is the charges. That's why they prefer to change crew to other country.
Can I
Sir?
respond to that, Marla?
Yes, please, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, there are already measures being placed by the Department of Transportation, being the one in charge of the one-stop shop. There is one company that charged excessive fees. I think they were suspended. So that's the beauty here in our country. Some of our countries are close to crew change, so we opened our hubs for crew change. We established the one-stop shop so that our seafarers are always safe whenever they come onto the country. And then so ships are coming here, so we allow even foreign seafarers are doing crew change here. That's why we have lots of ships coming in, and it's good for our economy. Pangalawa, the other thing that I'd like to share my salute to the seafarers, to our Filipino seafarers. You know why is our Filipino seafarers the choice of our principals? Because they are very resilient, they are flexible, they are hardworking, they are reliable, they are dedicated. In fact, I met some of our seafarers who arrived here in the country after 16 months of deployment. And they even told me if they can stay a little longer, that's good for them. Ibig sabihin, they are willing to be there in spite of because of the pandemic, and that's why the principals likes the Filipino seafarers because they are very reliable and very they don't complain that much. My salute to our modern heroes, our seafarers.
Okay, thank you po. We have also a few questions about the curriculum, no? And also related set of questions about how the maritime schools are coping with the pandemic. I guess some of them have been addressed by Dean Bedia, but let me just run through some of these questions. One is, how is health education, including sexual and reproductive health, incorporated in the curriculum of maritime education? Related to that, how are gender perspectives, analysis, sensitivity, and ending violence against women or gender-based violence and harassment mainstreamed and strengthened in maritime education? And also related to that, still about the curriculum, what changes in maritime education should be prioritized in light of the current pandemic to better address the challenges in the new normal? So maybe Dean Bedia might like to address one or two of those issues that were raised.
Actually, the challenges. Good afternoon, everybody. Challenges in the academic sector is quite tremendous because, as you see, as from my presentation, we cannot do all the subjects in the lectures. What about, say, for example, if we send the person to do electrical work in his house, what happens if there is a short circuit? So some subjects have to be done under the supervision of a qualified personnel. That is why I am requesting Ted Marina to at least fast track the protocol of the face-to-face classes, at least for certain numbers of percentage. For example, in a 40 class students, only 20 students are allowed to go to the campus. So in that way, we will be able to monitor and strictly implement the IATF regulations. Because at the moment, what we're trying to do is some of the laboratory subjects that we're doing are done online. Well, that is okay for subjects that can be done online. What about those subjects? For example, welding. Can you do welding in a computer? I think we cannot do it. Therefore, we have to do it in a welding shop, in our shop here in the academy. At the same time, if we have 20 students coming to the campus, then we could we could deputize the personnel to strictly monitor the students in order that there will be no more violation of the IATF protocols. Only, I have already submitted, and I presume our school has submitted my recommendation of the face-to-face classes to CHED. However, the second semester is already almost halfway, and I haven't received any response from CHED. So what happened to our laboratory subjects? We'll have to move it again to the next semester. What about the third-year students? How can they graduate? If they will not do the laboratory subjects, then they won't have a grade. They won't have a grade on that subject, then they cannot graduate. That is only my opinion, ma'am.
Thank
Yes,
you. Well taken. Yes.
Can I respond? Well, Shed and Marina can only do so much as far as the IATF allows us to do. They say there should be no face-to-face. We cannot go against the resolution of IATF. But we are closely coordinating with them. And what we did, I think, what the MXCI are doing is they do the theoretical aspect of the education first. And when hopefully the vaccines will be there, and then we allow now face-to-face, then they do the practical exercises. So that's the remedy that we are doing. Do the theoretical aspect of the education, and then later on, if IATF allows us to do face-to-face, then we do the practical exercises. So that's the only thing that we can do as far as the pandemic is concerned. Because the number one priority of IATF is that the virus will not spread quickly and will affect everybody. The second, I think the second question is about curriculum. I'd like to admit that for the past 6 years, we already changed curriculum 3 times. And the last one is in 2019. 2014, 2017, I think we changed curriculum 3 times. Even if the curriculum has not yet been fully implemented, we changed the curriculum. And that's why it's my policy, as far as the administrator is concerned, that the new curriculum which we are preparing now, embodied in JCMMC #1, I strictly, it's my direction that we will not try to change this curriculum until it's fully implemented. We are the #1, we are the seafarer of choice with the curriculum, the old curriculum that we are doing in MHEI. So why change? But there was a change in 2018, and that's what we're implementing right now. But hopefully during my time, there should be, maybe come up with moratorium that we should not be changing curriculum once in every 2 years. That's not a good way of doing things. Thank you.
I just wonder, Vice Admiral Empedrad, about the question on mainstreaming health education, sexual and reproductive health, and also gender sensitivity within the existing curriculum. Do you see any movements in that regard, or maybe this is more of a CHED matter? But...
It's a chat matter, but we have an organization in the maritime industry. We have a group of, we have an association that deals with gender and development equality. I think we are supporting their cause, and we are also engaged with them. Just like assigning more female in marina, assigning more female in ships, and so this is. I'm not sure, but I think the SHED and maybe civil service will be involved. Should be involved heavily in gender and development. But I support that we should put more. There should be no discrimination as far as the gender is concerned in the maritime industry at all.
Thank you very much, and I hope you will forgive me if I will make a shameless plug. Actually, that will be the topic of our next webinar in March, Women in the Maritime Sector. So we hope that some of those issues could also be addressed more extensively. Father Paulo, would you like to ask a few more questions, or because we are also taking note of the time?
Yes. Just a question, I think, for the schools. It's an important question, perhaps a reaction from you guys there. How much is the pandemic having an impact on the graduating students, especially when we look into those issues of quality rather than quantity? Will they graduate this year, next year, the following year? And therefore, when it comes to the deployment down the line, in a number of years, will we have there the seafarers that, especially in Pedrad and Iris, you're talking about? Seafarers that are strong, seafarers that are really prepared, that we can take up those jobs, etc.
Yes, sir. That is a very tough question. We do not know what is the impact of the pandemic because we are doing online blended learning, combination of face-to-face and online. Now purely online because they do not allow us to do that. I do not know what will be the impact to our seafarers when they are deployed in the future. But what can I assure everyone is when the seafarers do the training that they need to do before they get their COC, that's where we can focus. Maybe ensure that the training institution have the simulators. If they cannot go aboard ship, we are coming up with a protocol on how many students can be assigned, can do OBT aboard domestic ships. So we are coming with all these alternatives to ensure that before the seafarers are deployed in the ships, they have a training that they cannot get in the maritime higher education institution, but to improve their competence. That's what that's where we can focus and emphasize here in Maritime Industry Authority. But I can't say if these graduates will be better than those who were who attended the face-to-face program before the pandemic, sir.
Yeah, I think Nelson will agree with me when I say that maybe that is one of the questions that can be examined by further research. What do you think, Nelson? Yeah. So I'd like to thank all our resource speakers for their time and for their generosity and for being with us up until the very end. And before we end our webinar today, I would just like to invite all of our resource speakers if they have a final thought that they'd like to share with our audience. So maybe we can start with Attorney Iris. Some final thoughts.
Except aside from what I said earlier, I think what's necessary for us is really to strongly collaborate as a country, to overcome the challenges of COVID. To post-COVID, it's really to ensure our competitiveness as a sector, in the industry. That remains to be a problem. It continues to be a problem, and I can just envy also the other countries that are coming into play now, who are extremely competitive, very strategic, and I speak of, I don't know if you can say it here, Vietnam, maybe India. They're really, really strategic in their direction, both as an industry and the governing body of that industry. So perhaps we can learn a thing or two and really start working together. As I've been saying in my several engagements or speaking engagements, this is the time of collaboration, both local and international. I, for one, in my operations, only survived because we were really collaborating very closely. Even with my competitors, my manning competitors, we have to bolt in and really help each other with information, overcome this problem. You also see collaboration now in a heightened level between government, ourselves in crewing, plus the unions. Those are traditional tripartite that are very separate, but we have to come in for the sake of our seafarers. And this is important. We hope not to forget these lessons. We hope not to forget our collaboration when we shift back post-COVID, because these are very important practices and learning that we should maintain moving forward.
Thank you very much. May I call on Captain Arnel? If you have a wish or maybe recommendation or any final thought that you'd like to share with all of us.
We have to follow what the IFTF, our protocol, so that we the shipping agency, the ship's owner will be always hire us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much on that optimistic note. Vice Admiral Empedrad, your final thought?
Yes, the question is maritime education in the Philippines up for the challenge? My answer to that is yes. I fully agree that we are up to the challenge. Of course, pandemic is very tough, but we are coming up with systems in cooperation with the Commission of Higher Education to ensure that we have a lot of schools, 90 schools, and we hope that we can provide good governance so that these schools will be able to provide the proper education to our future seafarers. And we hope that we'll have more webinars like this because it educates everyone of what is going on. And my administration is more on collaboration with other maritime stakeholders. If we cannot work together, we join hands in ensuring the progress of the maritime industry. Then it's very tough. So I hope we'll work together for the progress of our maritime industry and our maritime nation. God bless our country.
Thank you very much. And from Ezekiel, what would be your wish, if you'd like to share it with us?
Can I ask to Sir Vice Admiral, ma'am? And
Okay. Yes, sure.
What about
Go ahead.
What about the processing of documents of seafarer? Some are fixers, ma'am. It's so hard to get the slot.
Yeah. If you are,
Thank you.
Am I given time to answer this one, ma'am?
Yes, Paul, because actually there was also that question from one of our registered participants.
The SID is, our country is the first that complied with the requirements of the SID under ILO 185 convention. So naturally, because the SID serves as a substitute to the passport. If you have SID and you go to the country that ratified the ILO, you can use that ID without, you can go on shore leave even if you don't have any passport. So naturally, everybody wants to have SID. So that's the problem. This is the first time that we are doing this. So everyone comes to Marina and wants to process their SID. So the queuing is very long and we have limited personnel. But because of this, why do we have fixers? Because the processing is very long. So what we did is we extend our services to 7 o'clock in the evening so that we can process more walk-ins. We allow walk-ins to come in and then process. Mag-walk-in na lang instead of going to the fixers. And the other one is, even on Saturdays, we open up our processing offices. So we increase our capacity. And then we are hiring personnel to address the long queuing of our seafarers. This is the issue. We came up with advisory. If you have a current SIRB, you don't have to get an SID because the SIRB can function as SID and SRB. The new system is when your SIRB expires, that's the only time for you to mandatorily get the SID. However, a lot of seafarers, even if they have the SIRB current, they want to have also their SID. So everybody is coming to Marina. And then the other one is when they only have 5 days before their departure and then they request for SID. So I think the problem is complicated by seafarers who have the money to pay fixers. Yun ang problema eh. We are appealing to seafarers to. That's why we came up with the advisory that if you have 3 months before the expiration of your SRB or licenses, you apply. The problem is you apply only a week before your departure. So if we cannot accommodate you because there is a queuing, you go to the fixers. Now we are trying to we are now reviewing the online system. We will look on the problem if there are people who can access our systems so that there is the presence of fixers. We are auditing that and hopefully we can do that within the week. And I hope I was able to answer your question that we are opening up our offices to accommodate people walk-ins. But of course, sana yung seafarers that have SIRB need not come here to renew their licenses because we will give priority to those who have expired SIRB. Please bear with us. We are doing our best to speed up the processes of the issuance of SID. Thank you. I hope I did.
Thank you, sir. That's really a very important practical information, no? And perhaps also maybe considering online transactions as well, no? Increasing online transactions to help with the queuing process. And of course, last but not the least, I'd like to invite Dr. Nelson to go for his final thoughts.
Right.
Opportunity to engage with the stakeholders of the industry and exchanging information and opinion about the state of the art of maritime education in the Philippines. We owe it to our seafarers to look after them and to prepare our young people to better opportunities in seafaring. We don't have the luxury of time to pussyfoot in implementing changes to the industry, especially in the maritime training and education sector. I have sailed with seafarers on 4 ships, a reefer container, an oil tanker, a bulk carrier, and an LNG as part of my work in research. And my months of sailing with Filipino seafarers have exposed me to the challenges of life at sea. So may this kind of exchange of ideas continue, because we owe it to Filipino seafarers to continue seeking ways to better their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I guess just building up also on that idea, we go back to, the heart of our discussion, and that is, looking after the interests of Filipinos, particularly those in the seafaring sector. So I think, Father Paulo, it's time for us to give our thanks to all our speakers, beginning with Vice Admiral Empedrad, with Dean Bedia. We'd like to thank all our discussants, Mr. Ezekiel Oquias, Captain Arnel Guadalupe, Attorney Iris Bagilat, and Dr. Nelson Turgo for their very rich insights. And of course, we'd like to thank all of you for staying with us and for joining us in this online event. And we hope that we will also see you again in other future events as well. We were not able to address all the questions, but we will review all the things that have been posted on chat box. And if there's an opportunity, we will also provide some additional answers also when we post this recording in SMC's Facebook page. So, Father Paulo, would you like to also say your word of thanks?
What I'd like to say is this. Seafaring in the 21st century. Is maritime education in the Philippines up to the challenge? Yes, it is. I think the speakers have highlighted the need of this kind of discussion. To each and all of us, thank you.
Yes, and I'd also just like to say that indeed collaboration is very, very important. No? So once again, from all of us here in SMC and the Stella Maris Centers in the Philippines, a very big thank you po. Maraming salamat. And please keep safe. And we hope that we will see you again in our next webinar. Thank you very much.